All right. We have our last guest, Dr. Jingjing Yu from Australia. She is currently a research lead in University of Sydney. Do you mind to introduce yourself a little bit to us, and also what is your career path from you getting the PhD to now?
Hello everyone. So I'm from University of Sydney. I work at Side Institute as an academic. I have my own independent funding. So I graduated. My PhD was awarded in 2012 from University of New South Wales, also in Australia. I was an international student. I received a scholarship to do my PhD, and after I graduated, I started as a casual research assistant first until I got my award. I transferred to being a postdoc, worked full time for a few years, then have families, changed to part time. So mostly part time in the later part of my postdoc years, and then had and then start to have small grants at the beginning, but then bigger grants later, and currently running multiple projects in across different areas, but mainly in cornea research.
Cool. So as far as I know, you were an international student. So what is the visa status were you at, and then what is your current situation? What is your current visa problem, or not the problem, but then the visa status, or are you a permanent resident there because of the grant and other things?
Well, so I'm not going to go too much into detail how people can get permanent residency, because I'm not the expert on that area. But just based on my experience, when I graduated my bachelor, I had the honors degree, and I didn't have PR, permanent residency, so I was not entitled for the national scholarship. But my supervisor at that time, I think I'm a really good student. My supervisor at that time really wanted to give me a scholarship and support me. So he wrote a letter to the migration office in Australia, and to explain that if I can have a PR, I will be able to get the scholarship and I can continue to do research with him in his area. So I started my PhD as an international student with the hope that I will be a PR and I can get the scholarship. So roughly about almost a year, I have my permanent residency, and then I got the scholarship. And the very nice thing is they actually pay back my previous spending. So yeah, so that was really good. Yeah, so at the moment I'm permanent residency in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the life as being a postdoc and early researcher in Australia, and why you choose to stay in Australia instead of have you ever thought of going to other country to pursue your career?
So yeah, after graduating, I was actually thinking that I maybe need to go to different countries and then really settle which country I need to be. But I was married, and family, and yeah, and also cultural background. So I have a lot of how do I say, influence from family that to stay in an area first. So they were saying, just stay in your family first, build your family area, and so at that time I thought, fine, at least let me get a job in Australia, and then I can think about it later. But once I got the job as a postdoc in Australia, something that I didn't expect, which is to get a grant, become the main drive of a postdoc career. Let's say research is the key, but you do need to get your own grant so that you can be independent. So I started to write grant, and I was actually really lucky that the first year I really got early career support from University's internal grant, and then the second year I got another internal grant, and each grant was lasting 1 year. So these 2 years I couldn't leave, and then the third year I started to get a little bit bigger grants, I start to get some eye-specific grants. So almost every year I get some grant there to keep me going. And I thought, this is my responsibility, and also start to have students. So things just start to stacking up. So I just didn't actually have the chance to really go to another place. So I stayed here, but I thought the good thing is I actually see researchers from around the world to come to, SafeSide and come to University of Sydney. So I get to know them and know their experience. And I also sponsored a visitor fellow from China who's here for 1 year and extended, and we actually wrote a grant together. And I had international students. So it kind of all goes well. I mean, I didn't really go to another country, but I had some experience.
Awesome, Jingjing. I think that's a really vast experience you have had, even though it's been in one country. So we were wondering if you can give us some tips to other young investigators on grant writing. What is from your experience? Yes.
Yeah, so my experience, I actually did write down a few key points I really like to share. First of all, I will not consider myself as a very successful grant writer, even though I have grants, because there are many people out there that receive much more grants than I do, and they're all really nice. So the first point I wanted to kind of come across is you do need to think about grant writing from day one. When I say day one, it means only if you want to have your own research, otherwise you don't need to do this. But if you don't want to have your own research, you need to start to think, how can I get a grant? How can I design this project so it's more attractive? So you actually had to look at the government policy, university strategy. They're actually quite important. And when I began my research, I was doing mostly basic research.
Yeah.
And I get really little grants, like really small grants, 30K, maximum 50K, lasting just tiny little bit of your research project. Did not get any big grant. So I started to read, really carefully the national strategy, the university strategy, the major grants, what they rank, how their guidelines, and the grants that has been pastly successful. And I realized that the strategy, or the future, is in the translational research, at least in Australia. So about 3 years in my postdoc, the whole country is talking about translational research. And now if you are still doing basic research and not showing your research have some future in translational, you won't be able to get big grants. You can still get small grants, but for big grants, you in a competition with every top researcher nationally in a team, and if you're not fitting the national strategy or interests, it's just very hard to get it. So that's the first thing. You actually need to think big picture. What does this country want? What does the university want? Is your research aligned with this big picture? In order to get big grants, you kind of need that. You need that kind of thought. And then the second is really your team. I mean, you can, have investigator grants, so you're being really, really excellent. But you can also be part of a multidisciplinary team. So if you can demonstrate that you can work with the people, you actually should start to explore working with people outside your field and think, how can we bring it together to make a project that come across different disciplinary? If you can do that, then that's another chance to get really good grants. Then the third is really listen to people's comment. You may think you give your proposal to other people to review, they come back with sometimes ridiculous comments, but you probably need to think about why. Maybe they just don't understand your grant. That's why they give you the ridiculous comments or very negative comments. So maybe you need to make your grant, really nice, like really understandable by other people. So they can actually give you, at least a reasonable grant. So yeah, any grants, you share with people outside your field. You get their feeling. If they're not excited by you, this is just something that you need to do. You need to make it more exciting, because it's almost like an advertisement of your project.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think those are really great tips.
So,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So I'm just curious, going back to the question, what is casual postdoc?
Oh, casual research assistant. So
Okay.
when you submitted your thesis, there is a few months of waiting time for you to get the completion letter, sorry, the comment back from your
Yeah.
reviewer, and then you're gonna change your comments and send it back. So there's a couple, sometimes up to half a year. Well, I waited half a year until I have my conferral letter from uni that I awarded with the PhD. So this waiting time, I started as a casual research assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. So, do you consider you have a postdoc, or like you are just go straight to independent from research assistant?
Yeah, so I don't think actually, well, I think in Australia, at least when I start my job, postdoc isn't a training position. It's already independent research. So from day one, I start as a postdoc, I was asked to write grants.
Yeah.
And so in my first year of postdoc, I wrote 3 grants.
Yeah.
And I was, a little bit taken back. I actually had some negativity. I'm like, why I'm here to write grants and I have to do research? Why can't I just focus research? Why can't someone else just support my, work? But I still do it because I think, no one is asking to do something for nothing. So I still write the grant. And the second year, I was still doesn't want to write grant. I didn't want to write grant. I just want to do research. And I think I wrote about 3 grants at that time. And because of this feeling that I didn't want to write grants, I got very small grants. And also maybe because my research wasn't good enough, I get really small grants. So the third year was the time that the team of my group leader was saying, look, if none of us getting any grant, we're not gonna continue the research. And that got me because I thought I'm working for someone. But no, I think in Australia, after your PhD, become a postdoc, you start to work for yourself. You need to kind of think about it as your own business. So I told my because I already had 6 grant writing experience at that time, and I know that if I continue write grants, it's not gonna get me anywhere. So I told my boss at that time, I said, look, you have to give me a year not writing grant because we are not generating enough data for something major. We really need to generating something and really need to think about research strategy. So that was the year I started to take initiative. Has to think, look, there's a reason we didn't get grant. We're really nice people. It is a lottery, it is a luck, but maybe we're just not on the right track. So we had a discussion, like strategy discussion, and this research strategy discussion is now happening every year within our group. So we always have a strategy. Are we aligning with the interests? Are we aligning with our own interests, the national interests? Is this project gonna generating something that's attracting grant, or mainly just generate something to be published as a paper?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. So I assume that the postdoc when I'm in here as a postdoc, I have to write grants as well. Like, I don't know how many grants I submitted, but then I'm never like being independent for my PI because all the grant will go to her or him, and then he will like, I would work on the grant, but on the side, but then I still doing another job. I'm not so sure it is the case in Australia as well. Like they have a big project and then asking you to write more grants.
Yeah, so I think it's a group it depending on the group, how big the group is, how small the group is, and what the team leader is like. But generally in Australia, you have grants for early career academic. So these are the grants that your boss who, you know, past that stage cannot apply. So you will be the chief investigator to apply for these grants, like early career, mid career. So they are grants just for you. And then in terms of so in my experience in my group, we were really small. When I started, it was only 3 people. I was the only postdoc. The other ones are professors and they have clinical work. So I'm the only one doing scientific work, so I had to do the research direction. The direction was given by him at that time at the beginning, but then you will, just through like the strategy talk, research discussion, I was allowed to develop my own direction. So if I actually propose most of the time I propose new direction to him and say, look, I think this is the technique that we should go ahead because and the reason that he hired me is because I can give scientific kind of insight. So we work quite well. So I didn't really have, I never really worked just for his project. I was always allowed to develop my own kind of thinking and my own way of like my own direction. Yeah, but it's always good to stay close with your collaborators and your supervisor, now my mentor, because they bring in kind of new collaborators to you, and they can be chief investigator, not the lead investigator, but chief investigator to your grant. So together you will have a more outstanding team than just yourself. Yeah.
Right.
Do you have other question?
No, I think we're pretty close to the time, well past the time, so I think it's good. We can stop the recording and we can have a discussion if you want.
Mind to close it and say thank you to Jingjing, and so I can just cut this part.
Yeah, you
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for sharing your experience particularly in Australia. I think it's very helpful, particularly for us in America. They actually have different culture difference in terms of the career development process. And then we talked to Nicole yesterday, not yesterday. We talked to Nicole, and she mentioned about that it's relatively difficult to have like postdoc, but I was so glad that actually we can actually see aspect from a postdoc, which is very difficult to get, and then her experience to us, and then that will help us or other young investigators to further think where they should go, which way they should go, and thank you so much for your tips, and then how to write a grant. That's amazing. And then I thank you so much, and then hopefully you'll stay to the end, and then we'll have the discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just stop recording now.